What's going on, everybody? So before we get into what we're going to talk about today, I just wanted to say this channel is presented by After Dark Sports and Browns After Dark. Please be sure to check out Browns After Dark every Sunday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Follow us at Browns After Dark on Twitter. What's up, guys? I have an exciting announcement for you today. I can now officially say that I am proud to be partnered with the Offside Sports Network. You might be asking yourself, well, what does that mean? Well, nothing on this channel is really going to change as far as what you see and hear, but this is going to open the door to more opportunities for things such as more shows, podcasts, merch down the road, sponsorships, and it's going to allow you to be a part of a fantastic community. I am very happy to be involved and partnered with the Offside Sports Network. Be sure to go check out the Discord if you would like. People in there nonstop, just about every day. It's a fantastic community you're going to want to be a part of. So be sure to check out the Discord and follow Offside Sports Network on Twitter.
All right. Welcome back to a very special edition of the Browns Beat podcast. My name is Tristan, and I'm here with my man.
Yep, I'm Derek.
Yes, sir. Awesome. And today, the day we have all been waiting for, Baker Mayfield has been traded away from the Cleveland Browns to the Carolina Panthers. Whew, it feels really good to finally say it. Derek, so the compensation in return for the trade was a conditional fifth-round pick, as reported by Ian Rappaport. Derek, what do you think? What do you think about the deal?
Yeah, so this is a bit interesting. So I think the biggest factor in this is obviously the money. And it came out that Baker Mayfield's going to take a $3.5 million pay cut to get this trade done. So it's a bit interesting. It seemed like Baker was like, "Listen, I don't care. Just trade me. I'll eat $3 million. It doesn't matter." Which, I mean, good for him. If he feels comfortable doing that, then that, I guess, it works out for him. So basically, the Browns are going to end up paying 10.5 of this per Mike Garafolo. Carolina's going to only take on $5 million. So essentially, Baker's saying, "All right, I'm going to eat some money. You eat some money, and let's get this done." So as far as the compensation goes, I thought it was always going to be a fourth-round pick. And now it's come out, and it's a conditional fifth that can turn into a four. So I'm not too surprised, but, it is what it is. I mean, it's more so about Baker getting moved to his next spot and for the Browns to be able to move on from this, in my opinion.
Yeah, spot on. I think that ultimately, when we take a look at Baker's time in Cleveland, and well, actually, first, before I get into that, let's just talk about the trade itself. It's a low risk, high reward deal for the Panthers. I mean, with a deal like this, you're getting the insurance at quarterback. They did not have a great year with Sam Darnold and the rotation of Darnold and BJ Walker and Cam Newton. So, you're getting Baker Mayfield, a guy who has led his team to the playoffs before. And I said it in our schedule reaction and schedule prediction video, and I'll say it now. That Carolina team, it's where the Browns were a few years ago. There's a lot of really solid young pieces on that team, and really all they needed was a quarterback just to kind of glue it all together. Like I told you, I felt like the NFC was weak this year, and I think that they could sneak into the playoffs with Baker Mayfield if he can return to that 2020 form. That's the big if. If he can return to that form, there's no doubt in my mind they can make the playoffs. I just don't know if they could move on and end up having more success with just getting to that, other than just getting to the playoffs. To get a quarterback like Baker for $5 million with only giving up a fifth-round pick that can only turn into a fourth-rounder, it's a great deal for the Panthers. When we look at the Browns side of things, I mean, listen, they knew that they had to move off of Baker the moment that they got Deshaun. And, it's more of a, for me personally, it's more of a PR win for the Browns than anything. That fifth rounder may or may not turn into something. If it's a fourth rounder, it may or may not turn into something. Who knows? But the big news is you got Baker dealt with. We don't have to talk about it anymore. It's not a big story. And from Baker's side of this, I feel like he's going to a team that, has enough there for him to succeed. I think that the offensive line that they have is solid. You've got Christian McCaffrey, who, when healthy, is one of the best running backs in the league, especially he's so explosive out of the backfield. And you got DJ Moore, who's one of the more underrated receivers in the league, who also has a boatload of talent. So, I think all sides won here, but I think that the Panthers really did well here, and I feel like the Browns just got rid of the PR nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but I feel like now that the day's here, when you kind of break it down a little bit more from the Panthers side of things, it's like we said a while back, they had to make a move. I mean, when it comes down to it, I almost said Matt Canada. Why can't I remember his name?
Matt Rule.
Yeah, Matt Rule. Yep.
There you go.
I got Matt right.
Yeah, you got it.
He's fighting for his job. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to what happens with the Panthers and what happens with him. I don't feel like they've been able to get a fair evaluation of Matt Rule, to be honest with you, because I had a tweet pulled up. I don't think I saved it, but the Panthers, did I save it? No, I didn't. Shit. Anyway, the Panthers basically had like a rundown of all the picks that they've given up, and it was like a second, a third, 2 fourths, and a fifth, I think it was, for all the quarterbacks, and that included Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, and Matt Corral. And it's like they're spending all these assets to go out and get quarterbacks to try to play this carousel game and see who they're going to get. And it's like, they still have no answer. So for the Browns, it made a ton of sense for Carolina to be trade partners, because at the end of the day, they were desperate. And the Browns were desperate from the standpoint of you have to move on. And it just made no sense. And I think another thing that's important to remember here, Baker's still rehabbing. Baker's going to have to learn an entire new offense and possibly have another new coach after Matt Rule, even if things don't work out. So it's like, at least I would rather Baker be able to get into the building at Carolina earlier, whether if we were going to hold on to him for another couple weeks or however long it needed to be. I'd rather just get done now. So again, from his side of things, he can focus on the rehab, focus on learning the new offense. And then on the Brown side of things, listen, you're going to get a ruling on Deshaun Watson, and you're going to have to deal with that internally. And if that doesn't go well, you're going to need to have as minimal of headaches as you possibly can. So I don't know. It's about damn time. And I'm happy for Baker. I hope he does well. And I hope from the Browns side of things that that they, at the end of the day, it was worth it, because you pulled this Band-Aid off. So it is what it is.
Yeah. And for me personally, when we're talking about Baker, for me, you can debate whether or not making the move for Deshaun Watson was the correct move. You can make that argument. You can't make the argument that it was the right move to move off of Baker, in my opinion, at least. His one season where he led us to the playoff and won us a playoff game was his third year in the NFL, where that's where you expect your quarterbacks to step up. You expect to see if your quarterback is going to be elite. That's where you're expecting to see those growth spurts. Like we're expecting Justin Herbert to transcend into a top 5 QB this year. That's what the expectation is for franchise guys, especially the guys who are drafted number 1 overall. And when we look at what Baker had that year, he had the best offensive line in football. They allowed him the most time in the pocket than any other team in the NFL. He was the most protected quarterback in the league. He also had the best run game in the entire NFL. So those are two things right there, where those two things should have been good enough with a year 3 quarterback who was a number 1 overall pick. Those two things should have been good enough to get you deep into the playoffs, maybe even win you the whole thing. We look at what the Bengals did with Joe Burrow this past year. Yes, they had the transcendent wide receiver that maybe we didn't have. I mean, we had Odell on the roster. It's just he wasn't really utilized. Baker was just not finding him. So, for me, it's a matter of after that year and then seeing the year that followed it, I think it was kind of obvious we were never going to win a Super Bowl with Baker. we had a much better defense last year. And while yes, part of his play was because of injury, I think people give him too much credit. I mean, a hurt shoulder doesn't make you miss a wide open receiver, like as far as the read. It makes you miss the wide open receiver as far as you throw it a few yards behind him. He was making the wrong reads, and he just wasn't executing the offense the way it was supposed to be executed. So for me, this was a no-brainer. We moved off of him. I think that was the right decision, and best of luck to him in the future. But for me, this was a no-brainer for the Browns. You had to do it.
Yeah, I mean, Baker was in a tough spot last year. I mean, you want to talk about shoulders.
Oh yes.
So, I mean, I think obviously me and Baker don't have the same injury, but I can tell you this much. In my little experience that I've had so far with this injury, because I have a separated shoulder. Baker had a torn labrum and some other issues. So I can tell you this much. I mean, obviously I can't throw because this is my throwing shoulder. But
Yeah.
if I was a lefty, and I was trying to throw right now, I can tell you this much. The little things as far as, and I'm glad almost that this happened because it puts it into perspective of kind of the little things you feel. For instance, like what I'm doing for work is like physical stuff, like it's construction, it's other stuff similar to that. I can't do that now, but I'm trying to do little things. And for instance, my boss was like, "Hey, can you pick up some of these rocks?" Because there was a bunch of big rocks out in the field, and he wanted them picked up. So I was like, "Yeah, I can do that." Well, just even the act of like this, leaning down to pick it up, that shifts, and when it shifts, that causes extreme pain. Because you can literally feel your shoulder like moving around. So obviously, it's a different injury, but for Baker, yeah, the shoulder injury should not affect the mental side of things, but I understand now more so why it did. And I credit him for trying to play through what he did, but at the end of the day, I think we're sitting at a totally different spot right now if the Browns decided to sit Baker and basically be like, "Hey, dude, like we understand you're hurt. Um, we're gonna try to figure it out. We're trying to play through the season and help you get healthy." But he decided to play, and obviously, it led to where it's at. I was of the belief that the Browns were going to move on from Baker regardless, whether if it was Deshaun, um, Jimmy G. I just don't think that they felt that Baker was the guy for them. So maybe that was after this next season, when I say that. But to me, the process of moving on happened maybe a year earlier than it was supposed to. But I'm happy it did because for him, if you were not going to be the guy long term, I would rather him at least go to a spot now where he can have that year. Because on that 5th-year option, the Panthers are paying, what did I say, $5 million? So, I mean, shoot, for $5 million, you're getting a former number 1 overall pick who's been to the playoffs, who can be, somewhat competent as far as, his leadership skill sets, as far as like on the field. But it'll be interesting to see. But Tristan, let's talk about week 1 because now it is official. Cleveland Browns are traveling to Carolina to play the Panthers week 1. What are you thinking about that game?
I'll be honest. I'm scared. I'm scared that boulder is going to roll right off of his shoulder, roll down that field, and it's going to knock us out. No, but seriously, no. Honestly, I think that listen, we know what Baker can do when he's fully healthy in an offense that has some talent in it. That offense has some talent in it. Christian McCaffrey's, I mean, unless if he tears his ACL in preseason, he's gonna have a fully healthy Christian McCaffrey, excuse me, DJ Moore. He's gonna have fully healthy DJ Moore. Like they have some other weapons there as well too. This team is not a walkover, and especially assuming we will not have Deshaun Watson, man, like it's actually gonna be a game. And my thing is, it's gonna be really interesting to see how our DBs do against Baker. That's gonna be the big thing. But this is also all under the assumption that Baker's gonna win the starting job. I expect him to. I think we both expect him to. I think we both view him as a better player than Sam Darnold. But also at the same token, I don't think it's just going to be handed to him. I think that they are going to have a competition. I think that's part of the reason why they didn't want to eat more money. They only wanted the $5 million. They can cut him if he doesn't win that starting job. I expect him to, but doesn't mean he will. But for Baker, I would be looking at this as like, hey, listen, man. If I'm Baker Mayfield, I'm saying I can get these guys to the playoffs. They have a good team. They have a good offense. Like, they have enough talent to get to the playoffs. If I take them there, I'm getting the bag. He's going to get the bag if he takes them to the playoffs. It's going to be anywhere between 30 to 40 mil a year. That's just what it is. So take the $3 million and eat it for this year, because it could earn you 30 next. So, it was what needed to be done for Baker, and I think that this is an amazing opportunity for him. I just think that his time in Cleveland was over, and I think that the Browns are looking to win the Super Bowl right now, and Baker right now needs to focus on still keeping a starting job for next season. I think that's what he needs to be focusing on, and the Browns need to be focusing on winning a Super Bowl. And I think people also are worried about Jacoby Brissett now being the full-time starter when Deshaun gets his suspension, which I think we're both anticipating he'll miss at least the first few games. I'll say this. I don't know as though Jacoby Brissett can be much worse than what Baker was last year. And with that said, in the competition we're playing early on in our schedule, the first 8 games, there's maybe 2 games in there where it's like, we're playing teams that we could see in the playoffs. Every other team there is, teams that are not really like cream of the crop. So I expect Jacoby to win us some games. I expect us to go out there, and I expect us to win. And I think that as long as if the Deshaun Watson suspension is less than 8 games, I think we'll be a playoff team. I think we should be a playoff team if he's suspended for 8 games or less. So
yeah,
that's just my personal opinion.
Absolutely. That, getting back to that week 1 matchup, that's going to be absolutely unbelievable. And I've said this as much as I can today in spaces, but for me, that almost feels like that Carolina Panthers Browns game is going to be like a Steelers game or a Ravens game or a Bengals game. That's going to be absolutely insane. I think the war that's going to happen. And before I get to this point, before I forget, I want to mention this. So Baker Mayfield's new offensive coordinator is Ben McAdoo, and I got a tweet pulled up here from the 2018 NFL draft and what McAdoo had to say about Baker, and he says, "quote Well, okay. So McAdoo rated Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, and Mason Rudolph ahead of Mayfield, and he said, "quote I don't think he was a great athlete. The guy is good grief. Hold on a second. I'm trying to. He's got. If you saw the tweet, you would understand why I'm stumbling. He's got it like screenshot. It's so weird. Okay, let me reread this. It says, "quote I didn't think he was a great athlete," McAdoo said. "This guy is kind of like a pocket quarterback that is short with small hands. That's what I worry about." So that's his new offensive coordinator. And then
5-star review.
Yeah, and then you had Robbie Anderson obviously giving his glowing reviews of Baker Mayfield. So that's a bit interesting how Baker's going to fit in Carolina. I think as far as the team goes, though, listen, Carolina's rebuilding the offensive line. That's a project. But as far as the weapons, I don't think he has terrible weapons to work with. Excuse me. McCaffrey's obviously a stud. So we'll see how he fits in. But I think he will end up starting. And I think, my biggest point here is the Browns defense knows Baker Mayfield better than anybody else, but Baker also knows the Browns defense. So it's going to be interesting. That's going to be a heck of a week 1 matchup.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to see. And honestly, I'm really excited to see, what Matt Rule looks like with a quarterback who we know has the ability to take a team to the playoffs. That's certainly something I'm looking forward to seeing with the Carolina Panthers. And it's going to be weird seeing Baker in the Carolina uniform. I just can't picture it. But hey, I guess we'll have to get a good look of it week 1, right? So
yeah, that's going to be like the Super Bowl week 1. I'm not going to lie.
I know. Is that game in Cleveland or Carolina?
No, it's in Carolina. But there's going to be a
man.
lot of Browns fans who travel for that one. That'll be
absolutely. I'm waiting for the I've got excuse me. I'm looking out for the Oklahoma Sooner fans. They're gonna be wild and crazy. I mean, they're going off about this move.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's quickly shift topics here to the man above you,
Yes,
Jacoby
sir.
Brissett. So obviously, most of the podcast today is going to be talking about Baker. I don't know how long we'll go for, but I want to touch on Jacoby real quick. So I talked about this a little bit earlier. There's a lot of people really, I don't want to say terrified now for the Browns fans who loved Baker, but people are acting like Jacoby is the worst quarterback ever, which I don't. Jacoby's not great, but he's not as bad as people think. I mean, for everybody panicking, I don't understand it because the Browns are going to play Browns football. They're going to run the ball. They're going to play defense. They're going to ask Jacoby to basically be a game manager, just not FS up would be the censored
PG
version
way.
Of, yeah. But you get what I'm trying to say. That's basically what they're going to ask Jacoby to do. So I don't understand the panic personally. I think the Browns are going to be fine. The Sean Watson suspension is an interesting conversation right now because it's literally gone from an indefinite suspension, a year minimum, maximum penalty to now people are talking about 6 games. People are talking about 8 games. And the longer this conversation goes on, it's now shifting to people who actually know stuff saying real possibility that Deshaun doesn't get suspended at all, which I find is very interesting because here's the thing. You got to understand from the media perspective, the NFL uses these guys, right? They uses the people with these microphones and a camera in a studio. They tell them little points to put out. You might not believe that, but it's the truth. So when you see guys like Rich Eisen come out and they're very strict on the NFL is going to give them a full year and everything's terrible. And Mike Florio, same thing. And now the tone's starting to shift. Something's happening. I don't know what it is. I can't tell you for sure. But to me, it seems like Jacoby Brissett is not going to be starting a long time. I think Deshaun's going to end up getting less than 6 games. And I think the argument here, it's not even about Deshaun. They've used Deshaun to hide the Dan Snyder stuff and the other stuff. And now that's starting to come out. And the NFLPA is going to fight this because they already talked about the Robert Kraft stuff. And, it came out that there was no proof of force or coercion, or I can't remember how it was exactly worded.
It was exactly that. Yeah.
So, I mean, the NFL, I think, is in a tough spot where you have 2 sides of this. You have the emotional reaction of the accusations are obviously terrible. I mean, you've read them. I've read them. They're horrible. If they're true, they're absolutely terrible.
Yeah, no.
But,
if it's true, he can't step on the football field ever again. Yeah.
Absolutely. But the problem there is in the court of law, if they have no evidence for that, and the NFL states that ownership is supposed to be held to a higher standard, which is what the NFLPA is talking about, and Robert Kraft is on video, and it's like, this is a dicey situation. So obviously there's the moral side of things where you're not really going to ever be able to prove if Deshaun did it or didn't. At the end of the day, only he knows, only the women who were involved know for a fact. And that's sad. That's terrible because I feel like justice will never be able to be served. But the NFL side of this is really messy. So I don't know, man. I just personally, I think there's going to be a lot of pissed people when the ruling comes down. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I agree. I think anything less than a year, there's going to be people angry. And you know, again, the stuff that's against Deshaun Watson, there is no like evidence that was good enough to go to trial. There was no evidence that was good enough to go to trial in any of these cases, which, that does suck because we won't ever get the definitive yes or no, this didn't happen. He did settle with all the other women. That is true. We do know that, but that's not necessarily an admission of guilt. That could just be he just wants all this stuff to go away as quick as possible. And at the end of the day, like the NFL in the meetings, we know from reports, they didn't find any evidence of any sexual misconduct of Deshaun Watson. They didn't find any evidence. They interviewed all of, or almost all of the women that were involved in the trial and the court proceedings. And what was found was that they decided to take 5 of the depositions or I guess the case information of essentially the evidence that they obtained through the 5 interviews, or 5 of the interviews, and pretty much that's what they presented in front of the judge, Sue Robinson, I believe is her name.
Yes. Yep.
And she, we don't know exactly what her thoughts are. We'll figure that out when the reports come out, whatever her ruling is. But
it should be soon, by the way, because I think the deadline is the 11th. So,
well, hey,
should be soon.
Hopeful we'll get another podcast out. But yeah, so the feeling that a lot of reporters had coming out of that was that the NFL's presentation was weak, and that the NFL having stuff come out that they were seeking an indefinite 1-year suspension, that was all a press PR kind of plan to get Deshaun to kind of fall into an agreement of the 1 year. So it's tough to say exactly where this is going to go. I see Twitter blowing up right now. Let's see.
Is it blowing up right now?
Just more Baker stuff. But anyway, so, it's really tough to say for sure just because we haven't had a ruling yet. But based off of the stuff that has come out, like you said, Derek, it's leaning towards a lesser suspension since there is no concrete evidence and there is no concrete, like you can argue that he violated maybe like a code of conduct somewhere where he didn't maintain his integrity or
I'm sorry,
image.
I'm not trying to laugh. This is terrible. People on Twitter are horrible. I gotta show you this. I don't know if it'll. Oh,
yeah.
Hold on. Can you see it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's terrible, but that's
so
what I was
funny.
Laughing at.
You're good. It's terrible. It's funny, but no. So, but no. So there's no definitive way to say when you're going to see this ruling from Deshaun. There's no definitive way. However, based off the reports that are coming out about those meetings, about the press, or about all of this stuff, it's that, we're expecting that he will get a lesser suspension that most people are expecting. And I mean, listen, we'll know when we know, but I've got a gut feeling that, people are going to be very upset.
Yeah. I mean, I think people are going to be upset regardless, but at the end of the day, I think Sue Robinson being a judge is going to take the legal side of things more than the emotional. That's just me personally. I could be completely wrong. I could be totally wrong. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I think the NFL is in a bad spot because if they didn't have the other stuff going on at the same time of this Deshaun Watson situation, I feel like Deshaun would be getting the book. But the fact that there's so much that goes into this, I don't know. It's a very, very complicated situation. So just kind of getting back to Baker, and it's funny because we're on StreamYard here, and I have a clip saved from when the conversation of Baker being moved on from or not. And I have not listened to this since that day, and I wanna play it here. This is from 90 or not 92.3 ESPN Cleveland. I forget the guy's name. Is it Rizzo? Is that his name? Tony
Rizzo.
Rizzo. So
Yeah.
this is a clip from him that I played. It was me and my friend Cam, who you guys know, been on the channel many times. When we were talking about this, and Rizzo was talking about why the Browns are moving on from Baker. So I want to play this again. I've not seen this since then.
Yeah.
I want to play this, and then we'll talk about it and see how this translates to now since Baker's been officially traded. So I'm gonna play this.
Philosophically speaking, not who's available, not who thing, not going through the process over the next 3 months to make the decision in Berea, the philosophical question of whether or not the Browns should move on from Baker Mayfield. Tony, we've seen him for 4 years. I'm guessing the guys that, study football and scout football for a living probably have an idea of what they think Baker is. With that said, philosophically, the Browns are ready to move on from Baker Mayfield. Might not happen because of details of who they get or who they get. The reason he is on social media defending himself, he looks nervous, is that he kind of gets it too. Tony, in the building, they're in the building, they're ready to move on.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. That's definitely interesting now that, we are here and they talked about that's kind of when I talked about, I thought the Browns were going to move on from Baker Mayfield. That was kind of my thinking too. In the building, they were ready to move on. And obviously now, what Tony talked about, Tony Rizzo, that is, not Grossi, who happened to be in that clip. The Browns moved on. Baker's now a Carolina Panther and Deshaun Watson's a Cleveland Brown. So what do you think about that clip now in hindsight?
Well, first things first, I'm shocked in like the 2 seconds Tony Grossi was speaking, he didn't call Baker a hobbit. But outside of that, no.
Worse.
I'm only joking. No. But no. Yeah, hindsight's 2020, and Tony Rizzo had it spot on. He had it spot on, and he had the 2020 vision back then. And so, it's everything. When I look back at that last season and I look at everything that led to today, for me personally, I didn't start thinking about, is Baker the guy? I always thought he was, up until that Green Bay Packers game. I've said it multiple times in this podcast, but that was a game where 99% of quarterbacks who are starter calibers who are injured, 99% of them win that game because they are able to mentally, not necessarily physically, they are able to be good enough mentally and being able to read coverages and being able to, all of that stuff. All Baker needed to do that game was take care of the football, and we had a win.
Yeah.
The Browns defense, outside of the very first drive, did not give up a touchdown to the Green Bay Packers unless if it was off of a Baker Mayfield turnover. The Browns defense showed up and they balled out that game. And Baker Mayfield threw some of the worst interceptions I've seen a Cleveland Browns quarterback ever throw, being brutally honest. I mean, there was the one in particular where he's backed up to the end zone. He's got to be safe with it because if he throws an interception, it's inside your own 50.
Yeah.
And there's a completely wide open receiver, Jarvis Landry, on a crossing route underneath. There's, I believe it was a David Njoku on a post route too, who was open. And he decided to opt to go for the double team Donovan Peoples-Jones downfield. You can't do that, and he didn't have the sense in the moment that he couldn't do that. He felt like he could take that risk, knowing his injury, knowing you're backed up against your own goal line, knowing all of these things, knowing that your defense is shutting down Aaron Rodgers. he took the risk. And,
Yeah.
you know, at the end of the day, that was for me when I decided that, you know, Baker may not be the guy. And that's kind of the day where I thought he wasn't. I thought after that football game, after seeing how the defense not only felt and looked after that game, but also in the games following, where, you know, you had the Jadeveon Clowney fit against the Steelers where he threw the one player's shoe 50 yards, you know? So, you know, there's like, you know, there were so many things that kind of told me, like, the players in that locker room are starting to not believe in him. The fans are starting to not believe in him. The management team certainly didn't believe in him. So why should I?
Yeah.
And, you know, it shows today. Today, when you see he's finally gone, you can finally take that step back and kind of view the entire thing, you know, try to be as unbiased as you can. It needed to happen, and I'm glad it did. And, you know, I don't know about you, but after that trade kind of happened, I got my first reaction was just, finally, you know, I can breathe better without this. Like, I hated Brown's Twitter for so long, and there's still part of me that does, just because for so long it was either people are at each other's throats about Baker or at each other's throats about Deshaun. And having half of the argument gone, maybe we can, you know, actually see some enjoyable bits of Browns football. And it's symbolic of, you know, moving on from the players that, you know, weren't going to be good enough to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that about that sigh of relief, because I really haven't had that yet until you just mentioned it. I think it's finally processing that. All right, that's over with. He's gone. He's moved on. But at the same time, it's almost, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I kind of feel a little bit interesting about it, because for me personally, so much of this channel over the last what, I don't know how long I've been doing this. Probably 3-4 years, maybe. So much of it has been just defending Baker to the bitter end. And it's like, you know, it sucks that this is what it came down to. I wish he would have been the guy. I wish he, you know, everything would have worked out, but it's almost bittersweet from the standpoint of, I think both sides this was going to happen in the long run. I think for Baker, this was just not, the current state of the Browns was not where he's supposed to be at. I think it was kind of forced. It wasn't working out. So I'm happy for him that he can move on. You know, and I'm happy for the Browns, and as a Browns fan, that we have a new quarterback, you know, who we know the talent that he is. And I'm excited for Baker to get a new opportunity. And another thing too, he's going to the NFC. You know, we talk about how stacked and loaded the AFC is. That division that he's going to be in is going to be a tough one. But if he's there for longer than this season, let's just say he plays solid this year and they franchise tag him, something along those lines. That division's going to keep getting worse and worse and worse, and that's just better for the Panthers, because Tom Brady's going to retire at some point unless he plays till he's 80. You know, and that's just more of an opportunity for Baker to step in and take a bigger step. So, you know, it's interesting, but I agree with you. I feel that weight is that boulder is a little bit off the shoulder of the Cleveland Browns now. We can move on a little bit, but
yeah, and you know, adding on to that a little bit, you know, it's, you know, I can kind of start myself, at least, being able to look forward to the new year, being excited for the new year, because it's a new look. It's a definite new look, and we're not going to see the same faces that we were before. And, you know, are we going to have the talent that's going to be good enough to win the Super Bowl? We'll find out. We'll find out this year. But, you know, I got to say, the new look Cleveland Browns, you know, when we're talking strictly football, they look really good. They look really good, and they look a lot better than last year. I mean, our number one receiver last year was Jarvis Landry. We upgraded to Amari Cooper. And our quarterback last year was Baker Mayfield, and we've upgraded to Deshaun Watson. So you can't help but get excited about it. So, man, I'm looking forward to I'm really, really looking forward to week 1. Even if it's a game that we end up losing, there's so much in it that I'm excited for, and I can't wait. I just can't wait.
Yeah, we're going to be watching Baker Mayfield week 1, that's for sure. It may not be for the Browns, but we'll be watching.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to wrap up this podcast. We got about 40 minutes here. I apologize that we only pretty much talked about Baker, but obviously we've been waiting on this news. On the next episode, we're going to be talking about hopefully what happens with Deshaun, but if not, we're going to be talking about boom and bust, who we think is going to take a step this year, who we think could take a step back, any surprises there. So we'll have that and much more. But before we wrap up, I think it's appropriate. Baker Mayfield's gone. Share your best memories of Baker Reagan Mayfield and his time in Cleveland.
Okay. Well, the two obvious ones are his first game when he stepped in against the Jets, and the playoff win against the Steelers. So, should I go with those? Should I not go with those? That's the big question.
You can take how many as you want. I don't care.
Oh, man.
I got a couple I'm going to mention anyway, so go ahead.
Yeah, so you know what? I'll start off with the Jets game. That Jets game, I remember I played hockey for about 13, 14 years, and I was living in Worcester, Ohio, to play hockey for a junior hockey team there. And so I was living in what's called a billet home, where it's people who are willing to take in hockey players for the season, pretty much just kind of live there, right? And so, I was in my billet home, and I remember it was me and two of my roommates. One of them was a Steelers fan. The other one was a Browns fan. And, so I just remember sitting there, and I'm watching that game, and I'm thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, Tyrod Taylor. I thought he was going to be okay for us. My goodness, he sucks, And then all of a sudden he gets hurt, and I'm oh my gosh, is Baker Mayfield really about to touch the field for the first time? No, he's not ready. That was my first thing. I was like, he's not ready. He's not ready. I don't want to see him yet. I don't want to see him yet. I want to make sure he doesn't get damaged by how crappy our team is. That was my thing. And then we obviously, Tyrod got injured on a third down. We punted, got the ball back, and here we go. Baker Mayfield 2-minute drill, and just first pass, zoop, right over the middle, Jarvis Landry, for a quick, I believe it was like 10 yards. I believe there was a slant over the middle to Njoku, right? And there were a couple of throws in there. And then, we kicked the field goal, and here I am, like, freaking out. I was like, oh, I didn't know he was ready, So, like, yeah. And then, the final drive was that final game-winning drive was just amazing. And, watching Sam Darnold throw the interception, I felt right there, that was our symbol. We got the right guy. And I just remember smiling from ear to ear that night. So I'd say that was my favorite. Although the Steelers win, my vocal cords the day after.
Yeah. Oh, dude. It really sucks that things weren't able to work out because, listen, Baker Mayfield, regardless, I'm not going to remember Baker for the bad parts of it. I'm going to remember for the hope that he gave. Listen, I moved schools when I was a freshman in high school. That was Baker Mayfield's rookie season. And, I'm somebody who you might not be able to tell, for those who don't really know me personally, but I'm very introverted. I hate meeting new people. I don't enjoy talking for the most part to new people because I struggle with it. It's like a social thing. But that was really a way for me to try to make friends, was through talking about sports. And with the Cleveland Browns and with Baker Mayfield, it was like almost like a crutch, to where it helped because you're so excited about your team and you're so excited about this new quarterback. And it's like, hey, I can talk about that and still, and meet people that way. So it's like, I feel like personally, I kind of used that, in this new situation that I was thrown into, to try to help. And through that, it was, the rough times, the great times. It was always that, and it's bad to say that Baker was used to talk to people. But for me personally, I mean, it's just when you struggle to have a conversation with somebody and that's something you can talk about your team, that for me is what I will remember. The good times of being able to sit there and talk with my friend in study hall, like, dude, we got a guy. Like, this guy's legit. But the memories for me, that Jets game, like you said, just the zip. It wasn't even, it just looked different. It looked different. It felt different. But I'm going to be honest with you. There's one play that I'll forever remember Baker Mayfield for. And it's this one play, and it's not the playoff game. It's not to get to the playoffs. It's just a random game.
Can I take 2 guesses?
You got 2 guesses.
All right. I got the sideline pass against the Bengals to win. Like
Nope.
the final second.
No, but that is a good one. That is a good one.
And then the other one I was going to guess is the Tennessee Titans game where we blew them out. That throw to Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Nope, it's not any of those 2.
Damn.
So the one play when I remember Baker Mayfield as a Cleveland Brown will forever be his rookie season against the Carolina Panthers, where he rolls out, looks left, Jarvis Landry in double coverage, back left of the end zone, fits it perfect, touchdown. That is a throw that I will never ever forget, because that I'm like, dude, there's not even 30 quarterbacks who can make that throw.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's one of one that could do that. So it's very unfortunate, and I understand, obviously, yes, everybody who's listening to this has been listening to me for a while is probably like, hey, dumbass, you're the one who's saying we have to move on. Why are you so upset? I'm not upset. Listen, I understand this was going to happen regardless. But at the same time, Tristan, I think you feel the same way. As Browns fans, we can sit here and be thankful for what Baker Mayfield has done, and wish him the best. Not every place in your life you're meant to stay forever. So for Baker, I almost view it the same way, where you're somewhere and there's a lot of good. You'll never forget some moments. I'm sure he'll never forget it. But at the same time, there's better opportunities. And it's the same thing for Deshaun Watson. It's the same thing for you and for me, for everybody listening. It happens. It's life. So, with that being said, I think that'll wrap it up. So you got anything else you want to say?
Go Browns. Just looking forward to the new year. Ready for camp to start. Ready for the new look Brownies.
Absolutely. Go Browns. Like I said, we'll have another podcast up probably within a week and a half, depending on what happens with Deshaun, if there's any more news to talk about. So with that being said, everybody, thanks for watching. Leave us a comment. Let me know what's your favorite Baker Mayfield moment, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Take it easy.